Well, Peter, Hating Peter Tatchell is an incredible documentary. It's absolutely sensational.
And I've actually said I am prepared to go to court to testify in his defence because as much as I disagree with him, he has a right to his free speech.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that's a very brave position to take. Now, look, tell me about the...
Society would remove a lot of sexual fear, anxiety and guilt if, instead of repressing children's sexuality, it acknowledged the fact that many children have sexual desires at an early age, and accordingly educated children so they are able to make free, informed and responsible decisions about when and with whom they have sex.
Peter Tatchell also joins me. He's a very well-known human rights and LGBT rights campaigner. Peter, what a privilege to be talking to you on this subject. It is, of course, today so important.
Certainly, in the realm of sexual ages of consent, we need to ask whether the law has any legitimate role to play in criminalising consenting, victimless sexual activity. As for protecting the young, the main protection they need, as do adults, is legal protection against forced, involuntary sexual acts, which is afforded by the laws covering rape and sexual assault.
I'm delighted to welcome legendary gay rights campaigner and human rights campaigner, frankly, a star of his own Netflix documentary, Being Peter Tatchell, produced by Sir Elton John. It's the one and only Peter Tatchell. Peter, we love the documentary. It's out now on Netflix, Being Peter Tatchell. It's a credit to you and your career. And
not all sex involving children is unwanted, abusive and harmful.
Joining me to discuss this is an old friend of mine, Peter Tatchell, perhaps one of the best-known gay rights campaigners who I got to know in those early days when it was just a fledgling movement. I mean, first of all, to be clear, after all those letters, Peter,
In 2020, Southwark Council removed some bushes from a public park because homosexuals were sodomising each other in broad daylight behind them, in close proximity to a children's play area. This is what Peter Tatchell tweeted about that. Instead of liaising with local LGBT+ community, Southwark Labour has got a court injunction to stop gay men cruising in Burgess Park and are committing eco-vandalism by cutting down bushes to increase the likelihood that members of the public will see sex acts. Homophobia. Only the mind of a paedophile works that way. Hi, my name's Graham Thompson. If you endorse Peter Tatchell, you endorse paedophilia. That first quote came from a review that Mr. Tatchell wrote for a Communist Party publication 7 Days in 1987 on a paedophile anthology that he himself contributed to. The Telegraph unearthed that at the end of July last year, 2021, and the Irish publication Gript did a follow-up piece. And this was Mr. Tatchell's story to them. Someone wrote a draft for me. I did stylistic changes and shortened it. I did not notice that it endorsed sex with children. I apologize. I should have done. His review was paedophile advocacy from beginning to end. The link is in the description. What does Mr. Tatchell's preposterous lie mean? It means the same as all his lies to cover up for his paedophile advocacy. It means he has never recanted. It means that the Peter Tatchell of today is as committed to the cause of paedophilia as the Peter Tatchell of yesterday. The only difference is that he now operates by stealth, and he has had spectacular success. Why would a paedophile advocate like Mr. Tatchell be so big on trans? If you think about it, it really doesn't take much figuring out. If children can consent to change sex, they can consent to have sex. Studies show that if children are left to grow out of gender dysphoria instead of being pumped full of puberty blockers and primed for surgery, about 85% of them grow out of it. And of those, many of them turn out to be homosexual. Mr. Tatchell is willing to sacrifice homosexual children to bodily mutilation to advance his paedophile agenda. Mr. Tatchell is very much a paedophile advocate first and a homosexual rights activist, a very poor second. The spectacular paedophile success of Mr. Tatchell is that Parliament overwhelmingly waved the white flag in 2019 to make LGBTQ education compulsory in British schools. You only have to switch your brain on for 2 seconds to know that that is a predator's charter. Schools are now mandated to groom little boys from the age of 5 and under to accept getting buggered is normal on pain of punishment for homophobia. We have nationalised child grooming in British schools. What the paedophile lobby can achieve if it calls anyone who stands in its way homophobe or transphobe. It's fantastic after 40 years of where the BBC's, 40 plus years of where the BBC's been heading. It's fantastic that we have a national news broadcaster that has the good of Britain at heart, a national broadcaster that loves Britain. Wow, just to hear myself say that after the torture of the BBC. But it does rather take the shine off things when it lets 4 of its presenters endorse paedophilia by endorsing Mr. Tatchell. Gooty Harry got sacked by GB News for taking the knee to Black Lives Matter. Any news person, especially any GB news person, would have no excuse for not knowing that BLM is a Marxist, racist organisation that hates Britain. What excuse do these 4 GB news presenters have for taking a verbal knee? to Mr. Tatchell. What do Peter Tatchell and Jimmy Savile have in common? Neither of them has ever been convicted of a paedophile offence. What's the difference between Jimmy Savile and Peter Tatchell? Jimmy Savile never spent up to 20 years of his life in the 80s and 90s openly advocating for paedophilia. And what else do Peter Tatchell and Jimmy Savile have in common? They have both hidden their depravity behind a mask of virtue. Have we learnt anything? My cat's trying to join this. Have we learnt anything from Jimmy Savile? Have we, heck? If Jimmy Savile came back to life today, no doubt these GB News presenters would be fawning over him as well. I fully appreciate that GB News is very frightened that our pro-paedophile big tech overlords will pull its app from Google Play and Apple and ban it on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter if it ever covered the facts about Mr. Tatchell's paedophile advocacy. But if it's not going to address those facts or let anyone else go on air to do so, it should not have him on. These facts are very germane to the agenda he is pushing today. Mr. Tatchell's past is very much part of his present. And if you think what I'm trying to say is that anyone who wants to pump children full of puberty blockers and subject them to LGBTQ indoctrination from kindergarten has a paedophile agenda, congratulations, you've got it in one. It's fantastic having GB News, but if it's going to let its presenters endorse paedophilia by endorsing Peter Tatchell, can it really claim to have the good of Britain at heart?